So welcome, Friday, 9 September. It's a full moon, I think, right? Or getting to be a full moon, which means all the crazies are out. And speaking of crazy, the first attempt of your first module assessment, if you've never had me before, it's a head scratcher for some, and that's normal, and I don't want anybody to freak out, but it's all part of the secret sauce, okay? So everybody just, you know, let's walk through this together. One feature that we have in our, and I'm wondering if I should close, is that, or do I normally close the door when people are, they normally do, otherwise my voice is going to boom down the hallway. All right, so here we go. Thanks for your patience. One of the features that I really enjoy with Blackboard is the ability to perform an item analysis. It's a statistical analysis of your assessment items, and that helps me identify, okay, wow, 4 out of 5 students blew this one. So, you know, let's take a closer look, and then let's circle back, and then we'll talk about how to reconcile. Reconciliation is a very simple process, and I want to be very intentional about helping people understand that when you correct mistakes, we don't want to know what you were thinking. Showing your work, or I mean, we have other history from other classes, you know, math instructors say, you didn't show your work, or they didn't. So in our case, when you're reconciling, all we're interested in doing is getting the detail of the assessment item itself, and then for you to enter the information that was correct. Don't enter the information that was incorrect. Don't explain what you were thinking, right? We don't want you to spend any mental energy on the mistake, because that helps you remember the wrong stuff better. Do we want to remember the wrong stuff better? No, we don't want to remember the wrong stuff better. We want to remember the correct things better. And you'll see what I'm talking about in just a second. So in order to do this, the other thing that's important about item assessments is that we need most all of the students to have completed their first attempt if this is going to work, which is why I send reminders and try to get people to do this. I'm going to select item analysis, and then I'm going to run this item analysis. Now, one of the things that the item analysis does not take into account is this idea of mastery learning, which means that as we progress and you retake the assessment, you're going to see that some items are listed as poor items on the assessment. And I'll explain what that means. It's a misinterpretation of what's going on. So we had 16 possible questions, right? And there were 11 attempts, and the average student took 29 minutes, which means that the full amount of time that students had, they didn't use. And that's significant. The other thing too is that our assessments are open book, right? The module assessments are open book. Now they are timed, which means you can't spend forever digging. But the thing that I would like to impress upon you today is that it's good to check your references and do that kind of thing. Now, why do you want to do that in the assessment module? You will not be able to do it in the midterm and final. There will be no time. It's just going to be too many questions, too fast. And you're going to have, I mean, for the midterm, you'll have like 60 questions or so, and you'll have 90 minutes. And so at that point, if you haven't like, hey, I got some time to check this, right? What we're interested in doing is giving you an opportunity to refine the understanding. So once again, module assessments are intended for your benefit. And that's why I'm giving you opportunities to reconcile errors and then retake it so that we know, all right, now we're firing with all 8 cylinders, okay? That's the goal. When we get to the midterm and the final exam, those assessments, those evaluations are actually for me. It helps me understand, okay, how much of this are you retaining, right? So you might be in the weeds for a module and it's all firing, and then when you get back a couple of weeks later, It's like, okay, how much of this is sticking? How much of this is lasting? How much of this is permanent? I hope that makes sense. That is also why we do not allow reconciliation or retakes for the midterm or the final. It's a one-shot deal. And once you start, you cannot stop, you cannot pause. And anyway, that's a different issue. So what I usually do is I take a look at the average score, right? Now, I want you to consider that this is on a 5-point scale. And for a first attempt at a module assessment, for the class average to run about 70%, if you take 3.5 and divide it by 5, you get 70%. And that's actually pretty solid. That's not a bad, I mean, an average score should be an average score. If I'm doing this right and the assessment items are challenging and they require you to think and you have to know the stuff to get it right, I should be getting something somewhere in the C range, right? And we're right there at the bottom edge of the C level. So I know you might not have been jazzed about your results, but if you got anything north of a 1-point score, you should feel good because you got on the board. Okay, you might have been rushed, you might have had a job, you might have had family obligations, you might not have had a good night's sleep, your system may have flickered, you may not have been able to reference your study guide because it was on a different device. There are all sorts of things, and as we continue, you're going to get better. Now I want to talk about discrimination for a minute. Discrimination means, oh, I had 13 good questions out of 16, and then we get fair, poor, and cannot calculate. The poor and cannot calculate increase in number as your mastery increases. What am I saying? Discrimination means students are answering with different answers. That's the expectation. Some students are going to know the answers. Some are not going to know the answers. The statistical model in Blackboard says, okay, students should be kind of all over the map with their answers. That's the statistical norm. And one thing you're going to learn about statistics when you take that course is that when you're working in different contexts, what's the norm, it can be dramatically different. For mastery learning, we want to get to the place where all of our students are getting all the answers right, which means they're not answering differently between each other at all. Does this make sense? Okay, so discrimination as a measure of whether or not a question is good or bad is usually okay for the first round, but by the time we get to the retake, we should see all kinds of cannot calculate poor questions. Blackboard should vomit on itself and say, oh, I can't even calculate the discrimination for these items because it's just everybody's answering the same way, and hopefully everybody's getting it right. In which case, I'm delighted, you're delighted, everybody's happy, okay? Now, I wanted to explain these things because this is recorded, I'm putting it out on YouTube, and I don't want anybody pointing at this and telling the dean, he doesn't know what he's doing, this discrimination is all over the map, and look, there are so many poor questions. You have to understand the context, okay? All right, now, I may be one of few instructors that actually do this in the class as well, but here's the part that I want you to see also. This is another dynamic that's measured that is expected to change with the retake. You'll notice there are 8 easy questions, 7 medium questions, and 1 hard question. That's how Blackboard interprets the outcomes from students. How they answered it says, oh, this one must be a really hard question. Well, that one, no, those are, well, it must be hard because it's medium. Some got it, some didn't. And then, everybody got these. These must be easy questions. It's making, again, a statistical analysis based on an algorithm that is tested for most academic scenarios. It does not take into account mastery learning, where we want you to know some things really well. I don't want you to know the whole book. I don't want you to know 3/4 of your book. I want you to know the principles of computer architecture like the back of your hand by the end of this course. That's how I differ in some ways from other professors, okay? Full disclosure. And you can still drop the course if you want to run screaming from the room because I just scared you with that. But in any case, here's the thing that really helps. You can sort, you want to show all the questions on the screen, and you'll notice that we're displaying one of 16 items. So we have all of our items on the screen, but what we haven't done is checked for the average score. I'm going to sort by average score from worst to best. So I'm going to look down this column, and if I had an average score for a true false that was worth 1/4 of a point, and everybody got it correct, 100% got it correct. See that? Oh, it cannot calculate the discrimination. Why? Well, it's a simple question, and it's true, false, and everybody got it right. So again, Blackboard's going to go, I don't know how to do this, right? That's a question we do not need to review. And most likely, you will not see this question in the retake. Why? Everybody got it right. Everybody got it right. Yeah. Perfect. Thank you. Everybody here on everybody hear that on St. Thomas? I mean on St. Croix? I'm sorry. Force of habit. Everybody on?
Yes.
Okay, good. You got to tell me or shout or do something in chat if we're yes. Was that a question or were you stretching? You were stretching? You were just stretching? Yeah. Okay, that's cool. All right. So what are we going to do? We're going to take the time to click into each of these assessment items, especially the ones where the average score was what? Sucky. Okay. The average score was a 0.07, and the, let's see, this was a multiple choice item. I'm guessing this was worth 1/4 of a point. And so the average score for everybody in the class that took it was 0.07 out of 0.25. I hope that makes sense. Now, once again, there's trade-offs for doing this, but this is the part I find most entertaining, right? And I say that tongue in cheek. It's like, oh, we're examining our worst mistakes. And for me, that's valuable, because if there are gaps in understanding and it was a spectacular failure, I want to examine that. I want to see what's going on. And this tells me how many students answered which choice, okay? That's going to give me insights into, okay, what is everybody thinking? Let's read the question. A laser used with a recordable CD disc, like a CDR disc, right, burns tiny pits in the surface of the media to represent which binary value? Well, there are how many binary values? Only 2. And they are either what or what? 0 or 1. And the pit is designed to represent which? 0 or 1. And you see from this that 3 students selected the correct answer. You see that 7 students selected 0. Correct. Thank you. Student here just said, hey, that's 8, because 5 and 1 and 2 is 8, and I didn't see the 1 there. Thank you. All right, so 8 students answered 0. At least everybody didn't fall for a hexadecimal choice or a decimal choice, right? It's like, okay, it means 1 and 0. No, it doesn't mean 10. No, it's not a hexadecimal value. No, it's a binary value, right? Any questions on this item? Okay, are you going to see something like this on the next assessment? Absolutely. And what should we see the next time? Flawless victory, as people would say, or one of the heroes in Mortal Kombat would say. I'm kind of a Mortal Kombat fan myself. I just thought I would share that. Okay, so let's look at the next one. This was a multiple choice item, and it had something to do with hexadecimal values, right? It said, you notice in a network tool that a repeating pattern of hexadecimal characters, FF, FF, are shown on the screen. What can you correctly conclude about this? And if you look at the answer choices, 7 students answered correctly. The pattern is 2 bytes with 16 binary 1s and no 0 values. You have 1111, 1111, 1111, 1111. 4 sets of 4 1s. or 16 ones. That's what it means. 2 bytes. How many nibbles? 4 nibbles. Thank you. Give the man a cigar. Some students incorrectly answered the pattern is 1 byte with 8 binary 1 values and no values. And that, I'm guessing, might happen because you're seeing 4 Fs and you think that there's more ones and zeros and hex values. I don't know, but it's actually 2 bytes. So a byte is 2 hexadecimal characters or 8 ones and zeros. Right? Another student answered the pattern is 2 bytes with 16 binary values that alternate between 1 and 0. Well, if they alternated between 1 and 0, what would we see for values here? Would we have all Fs? Yeah, if you look at the, if you study the table, F is the last value, it has all ones. And of course, 0 has all zeros, right? So any questions on this item? All right, I'm going to pick up the pace. We're going to go faster because we want to have a little bit of time to talk about reconciliation and all that other stuff. All right. So this has to do with a bit shift example. If you shift the binary value 0, 1, 1, 0, 2 places to the left, what is the final hexadecimal value? Now, this often throws people if they're reading and they're in a hurry and they see hexadecimal and the decimal thing, it has to do with previous learning, right? So what I'm going to do is take this 1, 1 and I'm going to shift it to the left so that there's a 1 and then a gap and then a 1 and then 0, 0, 0. Does anybody need me to explain further or demonstrate? I'm willing to do that. Okay, so I'm sliding those 2 1 values over one place. That makes 1, 1, 0, 0 because I pick up a 0 on the right side. And I do it one more time. That bumps a 1 off the edge into the next nibble. Okay, so I'm creating a new nibble by sliding to the left. When you slide to the left twice, you're quadrupling the value, which means you're likely going to have to cross a boundary into the next nibble, right? I hope that makes sense. But the answer is 1, 8. And how do we get that answer? Well, we have 0, 0, 0, 1 over here in the left nibble, and then we have a 1 right here. See this one right here. Let me zoom in. This one right here slides over to the left and is now sitting right here, and we pick up zeros, so it's 1, 0, 0, 0. That's the binary equivalent of, that's the decimal equivalent of 8 and hexadecimal equivalent of 8. Any questions? Okay. Moving right along. I'm going to decrease this again. So what we usually do is we run down in the item analysis. And what I'll do going forward is I'll record the item analysis and put it with the reconciliation assignment. And then you're free to watch and listen. And then if you have additional questions beyond what I explain with each of those assessment items, I can go into that in class, okay? And or on the sideline. We don't have to bring it up in class, right? So Boolean result. This is a true-false question. When a circuit is closed, this means the Boolean value is true, or the equivalent of the number 1 in the base 2 number system. Is that true? It is true. Closed means the wire is continuous with the light bulb. There may be a diagram in your module 2 study guide that kind of draws this out. Let's take a quick look, okay? Let's take a quick look in our module 2 study guide. Might be in a later module, but it shows circuits. Yeah. Maybe it isn't. Okay. Let's do this. And I want to explain this a little more. So all right, does everybody see this?
Yes.
So this is a great example of on and off and what closed and open means. When the switch is closed, that means that the circuit is closed. That means the wires run continuously so that electricity can flow. The reason you know electricity is flowing is because the light bulb is lit. In this case, it's more of a science thing. That's the traditional diagram here. And so you have a battery and a light bulb. But the point is that the light bulb doesn't work unless it's on, which means that the circuit is closed, right? So that's what we mean. Now, when it's turned off and this switch is sticking up in the air, there's nothing to connect all the way through. So off would mean that the circuit is open. O for open, O for off. Okay, everybody got that? Just want to make sure everybody got that. All righty. So yeah, we're getting better and better. When we get to the point where a multiple choice question that could have had a flawless score of 0.25 and there was a 0.21, we can review that if you'd like. Usually when I get close to a max score in an assessment item, I don't typically review it unless people say, hey, can you do that one down underneath, right? So let's do this, the value of C. So what is the decimal value of the hexadecimal character C when it is used in this hexadecimal number? So what we're saying is that the C appears in the second place for hexadecimal. This is the 16s place, or actually this is the ones place. This is the 16s place, and this is the 256 place. So how do we get that? 16 to the 0 is what? 1. Anything to the 0 is what? 1. Okay. No matter what the number system. 16 to the first power is 16. Notice that when the exponent is 0, that's the first column yeah, it's the first column. And if you have a 3 column or a 3-digit, if you have a 3-character value, the important thing to understand is that you're in the second column, which is the first power. We always start our numbering with 0. And that's what throws people off. So 16 to the first power is 16. So what is the decimal value of C? Anyone? It is 12. And so I take 12 and multiply it by 16 and I get 192. Would anyone need to see that? I can break that out. Okay. So we did have some other answers. What we got here was a binary value. See, and that's where you got to be careful when you're reading the question. It doesn't ask what is the binary value, it asks what is the decimal value. Okay. So I wasn't trying to be tricky. I just want you to think, okay, which system am I in and where am I going? Okay. Let's look at another shift bit. I want to go over the shift bit examples because they can be tricky, in particular when you're sliding to the right. Okay. And then we'll take any questions you want. So this question asks, if you shift the binary value 01101 one place to the right, what is the final decimal value? Well, that means this one is over here where the 0 is. and we have to stop. We can't go any further to the right, because if we do, that 1 is going to drop off the face of the earth, and this is the first column. But I mean, we don't have a -1 column, right? So the 1 is here and the second one is there. That means we actually have a binary value of 0, 0, 1, 1. And if the question read, what is the binary value, or the final binary value, this would have been a correct answer. But it asks, what is the decimal value? Well, it has a 1 in the 2 to the 0 place, and it has a 1 in the 2 to the 1st place, which means, we have a value of 3, okay? And again, most everybody got that correct. Welcome. So let's take the last bit shift value, so for those of you, you might be asking yourself, what's the thing about bit shift and why are we covering bit shift? You may encounter in the course of your programming and coding a reference to assembly language and bit level operations. So on a very low coding level on the hardware, close to the hardware layer, there's a special kind of programming language called assembly language. And a lot of times, and then in lower, there are lower functions in very long-standing legacy programming languages like C, where you can do bit level operations. You can manipulate the 1s and 0s directly. It's very powerful, and it helps to understand what bit level operations are all about. And bit shift operations would be one example of that. Okay. So we have a binary value of 1, 1, 1, 0. What is the binary value of a 1 column shift, a bit shift to the left? So if I take this 1 and I slide it off this left boundary, what I start is a new nibble of 0, 0, 0, 1. That leaves the 2 1s over here. And when I slide to the left, I pick up another 0. So I get a 0, 0, 0, 1. And then I get a 1, 1, 0, 0. And that's the only answer that's correct, because there's a second nibble when you shift off to the left. Okay. Does that make sense? All right, there we go. All right, so the last thing I'm going to do, does anyone want to see any of the other questions? Most everyone got these other questions correct. You were stretching? Okay. Now, when we have a multi-answer question, those are worth more. And so if you see that the average score for a multi-answer question was a 0.28, but I think a 0.5 was possible. See, that's another challenge area, right? So we're going to look at our multi-answer questions. So multi-answer questions are tricky. And once again, we advised all of you, when you have a multi-answer question, do not select an answer option if you think it might be possible, but you're not absolutely sure. It is better to leave that unselected and only select the items you are absolutely sure. Otherwise, you lose points. Put another way, you can get most of a multi-answer question right and pick one too many, and it'll cancel out your credit, right? So that's the tricky part. Multi-answer questions are the bane of undergraduate students. I had one class last year that said, Professor Kentop, we get that you're doing this mastery learning and that's all good, but we've come together as a class and asked you, can you not have so many multi-answer questions on your assessments? You're killing us with those things. And I want to tell you what my answer was. I agreed. I said, okay, I'll have no more than like 20% of the items on there that are multi-answer, but I want you to understand why the multi-answer items are on there. When you get into the job, into your career path, and you have to certify You're getting industry certifications in networking and systems admin and programming and development, right? You have to get certifications with certain companies, industry leaders. That's important for your career path. So what am I saying? It's not just your degree. Once you get in the workplace, they're going to say, do you have a cybersecurity certification? Do you have a network certification? Do you have a developer's certification? And when you take those certification exams, what do they do to test your knowledge? They want you to be able to sift through the concepts of a given scenario and identify what matters and what doesn't. And it's brutal. And a lot of people crash on the rocks. And so this is kind of like your kindly old uncle giving you broccoli, and you're not really jazzed about broccoli, right? So we're trying to dress it up a little bit and explain why it's good for you. So now if it gets to be frustrating, all you have to do is nudge and I'll change. All right, so let's read the multi-answer question. A computer science student attempts to increase the hexadecimal number 1F to 16 times the original value by shifting bits to the right 3 places. Well, okay, the first problem is you're trying to increase, but if you're going to the right, that's actually cutting it in half, cutting it in a quarter. So if you shift to the right, you're decreasing, okay? That would be one problem, okay? However, this method fails repeatedly. Please select all statements below that are correct. Okay. If you want a factor of change that's 16 times, it's not 3 places because that's an 8-fold change. A 1-place shift is a double or a half. A 2-place shift is 4 or 1/4, depending on whether it's left or right, respectively. Okay. A 3-place shift is 2 to the 3rd, 8 or 1/8. A 4 is 16, but they're only going 3 places. That's the second problem. Okay. And the last thing is 4 binary zeros will result at the rightmost boundary. Now this one kind of catches people. You see, fewer students selected this answer. And what we're saying here is that if I take 1F, what I really have in terms of nibble is this. So let's just open this up and everybody can see my screen still. Okay, so I have a 0, 0, 0, 1, and then an F is actually a 1, 1, 1, 1. Now, how did I get that? I've told you that I want you to memorize. Did I say memorize? I meant like memorize verbatim. You can quote it in your sleep. You can wrap a home run with it. Not that you'd want to, but the point is that you want to be able to know this stuff like the back of your hand. You know that there are 5 ones in a row here. That's the important point. And I'm going to shift this 4 places to the left. And when I take these 5 ones and I shift them to the left 4 times, what I end up with is 0, 0, 0, 1. And wait a minute. No. Yeah. 1, 1, 1, 1. 0, 0, 0, 0. Okay, so this 1 comes off this left side and it has to become a new nibble. Does everybody get that? Remember I said that if you shift like 4 or more places, you're getting into new nibbles? All right, so that's what this is right here. It's actually the start of a new nibble. These 4 actually take up all 4 places here. And I have to add a leading 0 for every, I have to add a trailing 0 for every shift to the left. So I have 4 new zeros, which is why my answer choice is this, right? Any questions about that? Does anyone want me to explain why the other 2 choices are not true? Going once. So the hexadecimal value that results is 16F. Let's check that one. let's just, well, that's 1, but is this 6? No, it's F, right? We just went through that. F is all ones on a nibble. And then what is this one? Yeah, it's 1 foxtrot 0. That's the binary value. And if I take this value and I figure out what it is in decimal and I quadruple it, I get that answer. Okay. Any questions? All right. Let's go and look at the other multi-answer questions. And yeah. So that was a student from the class, and unfortunately I cannot take that call. So we're on this one here, I think. A computer science student attempts to decrease the hexadecimal number foxtrot 8 to 1/8 the original value by shifting bits to the right 2 times. So in each case, when we're talking about a scenario with bit shifts, it's often very good to just convert to bits so you know what you're looking at, right? And if you don't do that, if you don't have an instinct to grab a Word document or a notepad and then say, okay, these are the hex values, these are decimal values, what does it look like in binary? What are the bits, the ones and zeros? That's the first step. So if I look at foxtrot 8, what are my 2 nibbles? What do my 2 nibbles look like? I almost said bibble there. 2. Correct. 1 1 1 1 and 1 0 0 0. That's what I have to start with. And I want to decrease it. So am I shifting to the right or the left? Shifting to the right. And if it's a factor of 8, how many places am I shifting? 3 places, right? So again, I take this, and in this next example, I start with 1 1 1 1, 1 0 0 0, and I'm going to shift 3 places to the left. 3 places to the right. Oh, yeah, no. So essentially, these 3 ones take up the 3 zeros here, and that leaves the 2 ones remaining. Does everybody see what happened there? Okay. So now my value, let's go back to our question. And it's really helpful to do that with a Word document. So I would suggest everybody do that. The shift must be 3 places, not 2 places. 3 binary zeros result at the leftmost boundary. So if I look at that, I'm like, oh yeah, there they are. 3 zeros at the leftmost boundary. Leftmost meaning on this end, rightmost meaning on that end. Leading edge, trailing edge. Most significant bit, least significant bit. Because this bit right here represents 1. This bit right here represents 128. It's a more significant bit in terms of the binary number system. I don't know if that makes sense, but. All right, the shift must be to the right, not to the left. There we go. Any questions? Okay. This will be the last item, unless somebody wants me to do the last one as well. But almost everybody got the last multi-answer correct. So we can do that one if you want. In this multi-answer, it says select all that apply regarding the binary values used to represent a hexadecimal value. There are for a hexadecimal value, there are 4 binary digits or bits. That is correct. You preserve leading and trailing zeros. So as you're shifting, you have to remember, okay, am I gaining zeros on the right-hand side? Am I losing zeros? Am I gaining or losing zeros on the left-hand side? That's called preserving your zeros when you're shifting. Remember that if you have a value of 1 and it gets to the far right side, you can't slide. It is impossible to slide further to the right without doing really bad things. So that's one limitation of a bit shift method, is that when you get a 1 in the, I don't know if that makes sense. Okay. All right. Any questions about this one? Okay. So what do you do to reconcile. I think I'm going to post a video and it's going to explain reconciliation, but basically you use a Word document. And what I'd like to do is give you a quick example of, so here's, let's say that you got this item wrong, incorrect. And this is really important, and I'm glad I'm here in person because I want to share this with you. If you do this with that Word document and you say, okay, here are the words, you take the words of the question and you type them into the Word document. Now, here's what most students do, and they do this instinctively. They copy and paste. And why is that bad? Well, because we want you with your fingers to process those words, and that happens when you're typing them out manually. In other words, a different part of your brain is engaged, but if you copy and paste, copy and paste, copy and paste all the day long, you're not working the words and concepts with your fingers and your eyes. It's called tactile kinesthetics. Some people learn with their hands and their eyes. Some people learn by reading. Some people learn in auditory terms when they hear something. Some people learn in, in all those manners, right? In combinations of manners. The point I'm trying to make is you want to take that information and you want to intentionally, deliberately process it, handle it, work with it differently. And if you copy and paste, you're cheating yourself. I can always tell the people who copy and paste to put the words of a question in their reconciled item are people who are in a hurry, but then when we get to the retake, they blow the same question again. And I'm going to smile at you the next time I see you because I'm going to have that little secret between you and I. I'm like, yeah, there's the poster child for copy and paste right there. Because they didn't learn a darn thing. You understand what I'm saying? Now, if you type the words out, I know that's tedious, but one benefit of that, hidden benefit of that is just like eating broccoli, it gets you more fiber and nutrients, right? When you're typing, you'll get faster and better at typing. Now, some of you may be whizzes at typing. Well, just get faster, right? But type. And then I want you to also enter the correct answer items, the content of the correct answer items. So if I got this one wrong, I would say, okay, the answer should have been 1. Okay, so that's what I'm going to type. I'm going to say, my answer, I should have selected 1. Chosen 1. Or you could say 1 is the answer. Now, one thing I don't want you to do is I don't want you to say the answer is C. The answer is B. The answer is A. Because guess what happens with the next version? It is no longer A, B, or C, or D. That doesn't do any good. Now, here's what's going to happen. Every year, I have this moment of truth with students, and I hope you're listening on St. Croix. And I tell them this, and it's obvious which campus I was on, because here in St. Thomas, I'm having an emphatic moment with you about this, right? I'm being very intentional, very deliberate. We want to have a complete understanding of how this works. Because if you post something that's obviously copy and paste, right? And how do I know? See that bullet? It picked up a bullet because I copied and pasted. What else? The formatting is the same as the web page. What else? Put another way, there are little tricks. And my profession by trade is that I'm a hacker. So if you hack your way around this, I will catch you. It's what I do. It's what I've done for 25 years. If somebody has a workaround and you're doing something you're not supposed to do, I'll be the guy to tap you on the shoulder and say, we had to talk about this, right? Don't copy and paste. There are tells. There's little pieces of, it's like breadcrumbs, okay? The bigger difference is the outcome on the retakes. okay? So again, please don't. I was thinking this and I picked the wrong answer. Or I assumed such and such. No. Don't spend any mental energy on the mistake. I don't want you to spend mental energy recalling your mistake, because you're rehearsing the mistake, and we do not want to remember the mistake. We want to leave it in the rearview mirror. The only thing you want to be focused on is, this is what this requires, and this is what you need to know. And that's it. And it works. You'd be amazed at how it works. Now, as I was saying, in every case, for every class, every season, there is always a person or more who either puts their excuses for why they got the answer wrong, or they copy and paste, or they put the letter answers. I should have put C instead of D. And we just said, I don't want to know the letter or the answer choices. That doesn't help me, right? Don't do that. Don't quit hurting yourself. Has anybody ever seen the Disney movie Tarzan? Where it's like, quit hurting yourself, quit hurting yourself. There's a scene in the, you've never seen it. That's what happens. And here's what I do. I post no credit for the reconciliation, and then people get their feelings hurt. And I'm like, well, come on. Yeah. We've been on this. I'm giving you additional credit for just reviewing the gap, right? And all I'm asking you to do is to take a couple of seconds. So don't rush it, don't cheat. But trust me, it's kind of like the calisthenics you go through in basic training. Now I know we need to quit, and I know we need to let people go for the next class, and I've been bad about that. And it's 2 minutes after, so I want to close out so people can clear and get on to their next class. Are there any questions about what we've just covered in terms of the item analysis and in terms of what's expected for the reconciliation? Okay, well, I hope you have a great weekend. It's good to see you. If you can hang out a little bit, please do. And I'll stop sharing now and stop recording.